Hey everybody, welcome to the SolidWorks Hump Day Hot Tip for this week. Over the last few weeks we've been talking about capping off closed shapes, doing end caps essentially. We're capping off the ends of various kinds of shapes. We've done a circle, and that used a revolve. We've done a squircle using a lofted surface, and today we're going to do an ellipse, which is a slightly more complicated situation. It's going to require either a loft, a boundary, or a fill surface, depending on your general mood and demeanor. So today we're gonna go through that step by step. Now, first of all, really what we're going to do is create a surface that bridges across here, and to do that, first of all, well, probably the simplest way would be to grab the filled surface, actually. Grab this loop here, get the whole thing. That'll close that off for us. And then just head down to where it says contact here for our edge settings, and we're going to set that to tangent and hit OK. And that's going to shoot this thing way on up, which will not look like we want. But if we head to constraint curves and then click on our input curve here and hit OK, that, my friends, is going to give us the situation that we want. This is looking pretty decent, but you can see that something weird is happening here. I'm getting a bit of a sort of a butt crack scenario happening, and unfortunately, one of the things about the fill surface that is both an advantage and a disadvantage is just how little control you have over it. There's not much that we can do to change it. It does serve a very useful purpose in many situations. It can do a lot of really cool things, but it can also make your life pretty difficult if you don't know what you're doing. So let's actually delete this and do this in a very different way. So first of all, in order to use loft or boundary, we're going to need to break this edge into two halves. Really, the quickest way to do that is to head to curves and down to split line. I would then choose intersection mode, and I'm going to intersect the front plane, in this case, with our surface. Hit OK. That's going to basically split this face into two. We get a dashed tangent line in between here in SolidWorks, and now I can work with these edges separately without doing any damage to my model. So then let's go up to our lofted surface tool. I'll loft from here to here and all the way across to here. Looks perfect. Now we'll head to our start and end constraints. Let's set those to tangency to face on both sides. And that looks pretty good. Hit OK. And the result is not too shabby. Now, it's looking a little bit kind of flat here. And that's one piece of control that the loft tool does give us, is a magnitude vector. We can grab that and set that up to, say, 1.25 on one side. In fact, I'll go up to 1.5 here. We'll do 1.5 on both sides because we want to get that nice and fluffy. Both sides here. That's looking much rounder, much cleaner. That's actually looking pretty good to my eye. Let's turn on our zebra stripes and take a look at that. And that, folks, is looking really nice. That's actually very clean. This is a good surface. Let's turn that back off. We'll turn on our curvature, and you'll see that that also is very clean. We are going to get a little bit of weirdness down here at the end, right at this degenerate point where the surface kind of moves around a central point. And unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about that. But, you know, it's okay. It's actually not a big deal. Works just fine, and everything will work out in the end, I promise. Okay, so there is one other way we could do this, of course, and that's using the boundary surface. Now, the boundary surface can go the same way. We'll go from here to here to here. But this time we can select right out here in the viewport. We could set that to tangency to face, like I did before, or all the way up to curvature to face, and that'll kind of push the radius value, radius of 0 in this case, from this extrusion up into the input surface. And then we'll also set up the tension on both sides to 1.5 again, just like we did before. And this is going to show us some zebra stripes in the moment as we're working, which is kind of nice. Okay, so let's hit OK and turn on our curvature. You see that this one is actually less good. Notice that the curvature here is not fantastic. We are inheriting curvature from this, into this surface, which can cause problems. Whenever you introduce a curvature-continuous relationship, or where you're inheriting the radius of curvature from another surface, you are going to introduce more complexity to your surface, and notice that we are getting a little bit of that butt crack starting to happen here on the end. It may not be visible to us in normal OpenGL. It may look okay, but if we look at the curvature graph itself, that won't lie. And that's giving us problems. So let's try two things to fix that. First of all, let's edit our boundary surface, set that down to tangency to face instead of curvature to face, and let's see if that solves our problem. Turn on our curvature graph, and you can see that actually, even though it's better than it was on curvature mode, it's still not as clean as it was in the loft. So this is another one of those situations where we can see that even though the boundary surface is technically a more powerful tool, it does more things, it has more controls, in many cases it's going to create a surface that is more complex than is needed, and we'll end up with little dips and bumps and lumps that go along with that complexity almost inevitably. Okay, so that is the Hump Day Hot Tip for this week. With the elliptical surface, it seems like a lofted surface across these three curves is probably going to be our best bet. And so far, that seems to be the case. One more thing before we go. Let's try this out in curvature mode and see what happens. Notice that it fails, just like before last week. Too bad. We're going to have to stick with tangency on both sides. That'll take care of us. And we get the cleanest result of all this way. All right, that's it for this week. Next week, we're going to talk about capping an even more arbitrary, crazy, weird shape, see what we can do with that, and then I think we might be done with this little end caps tutorial series. All right, we'll talk to you soon. See ya.